Welcome, everybody. I see that half of the Sangha stayed home to watch the baseball game. Just us non-sports fans here, and Dennis, who's a sports fan and is practicing great renunciation by missing half of the big game in order to meditate and destroy. I forget about sports. That's how much of a sports fan I am. And then I realized, like, oh, it's a topic people are excited about, attached to, suffering about, or celebrating if, I guess, if you win, or could do a Dharma talk on winning and losing and groupthink attachments to the millionaires that get to play sports for a living. I was thinking more about politics tonight with the impending election. Tibby's representing Harris Walls over here. So I like anybody here for the first time? Welcome to you. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to anybody joining us online for the first time. I'd like to begin class by asking you to talk to each other. And I know if you're here for the first time, you're like, fuck, I'm, or if maybe if you've been coming for years, you're like, fuck, I came to meditate. I don't want to talk to people. But a core part of Buddhism is developing community. Yes, meditation. Yes, spiritual teachings. There's a whole path to liberation. Part of that path is connecting with other people on the path. It's relational, it's communal, it's about connection. And so I like to begin class by asking you to connect and talk to each other a little bit. And usually based on whatever topic, Buddhist talk or instructions I'm gonna give. Tonight, just maybe tonight and next week, it feels like this is true for most people or a lot of people. The political impending election is a topic of conversation, is on our minds, is up for a lot of people. A lot of fear, a lot of judgment, a lot of craving for a certain outcome, craving for another outcome to be whatever side you are on. Sebastian and I had a nice talk today about the kind of bipartisan situation that we're in when you don't have a good choice on either side, and then the kind of the third party choice, and the conversation about that and that sort of. And I think I threw out that sort of like a vote for the third party is a vote for is it a vote for the person that you're not that you don't want to win? Could be. The Buddha was political in some ways, not in, first of all, he didn't come from a democracy. He came from where the Buddhism was developed within a kind of, not theocracy, but monarchies, small kind of feudal monarchies, 2,600 years ago. There were kings, there were, but he was a little bit, he spoke out not against individual kings or politicians. He spoke about ignorance.
Thanks, Patty.
I was talking a bunch of political shit there. You missed it. It was brilliant. Welcome back. For your small groups tonight, I'd like to ask you to not get into your personal views and opinions with each other about candidates. But I'd like you to share with each other how the election, the political situation is affecting you. Are you noticing stress? Are you noticing fear? Are you noticing judgment? Are you noticing some of the causes of suffering in your heart and mind around the election, which is next week? I guess it's a week from tomorrow. Is it a thing for you? Is it one of the, like the whole conversation in Buddhism is how do we end suffering? Is this one of the ways that you experience suffering around politics? Or are you non-attached so much or disengaged or in some way that you're kind of like, it doesn't affect you? How is it affecting you? That's the question for the small groups. Is it affecting you? How's it affecting you? And try not to get into the specifics of who you like and who you don't like and why you like them and why you don't like them and all of that. Try not to. Just because, my assumption is that Buddhist communities and my community would be primarily liberal and but that's not true. It's not 100% true. In my early days teaching in San Francisco, there was this old hippie, long beard, hippie guy. And I was always going off about some liberal anarchist rant. And at one point he came up to me and he said, Noah, I love your teachings. I love your Sangha. I love Buddhism. He said, but I'm the president of the San Francisco NRA and I'm a Republican. And, you alienate me a lot with your political views. And I want to feel like I also have a place in the Sangha. I know that I have, different views than you do. That's okay. I want to learn about Buddhism. Maybe even my views are different than Buddhism, but I also want to feel welcome in the community. And I want everyone to feel welcome, no matter how ignorant your views may be. You're still welcome here. It's okay. You're, no matter what, you're still welcome here. And half joking about that. But of course, we all believe that our views and opinions are the right ones, whether they're the right side or the left side or the third side or the anarchist, all politicians are crooks or whatever your views are. We all believe our own views. Talk to each other a little bit around how it's coming up for you in this impending political presidential election season. Small groups, 2 or 3 people, better if you connect with people you don't know yet, so you meet some new people. And at home, I'll throw you in breakout rooms, which are randomly chosen. So I'll offer a guided meditation, some instructions for sitting meditation. First one being find a way to sit that's sustainable. Try to find a posture that feels like you can maintain stillness. As you're ready, allowing your eyes to be closed and making any adjustments necessary to the upright but relaxed posture. Establishing the intention to be kind and friendly, patient, and accepting of your experience, whatever it is. Bringing mindfulness, present time, non-judgmental, kind awareness, paying attention to the present. Beginning with the physical experience of the present, the sensations in your body. Releasing any unnecessary tension, softening the brow, the jaw, shoulders, any places where your body gets tight, tense. And bringing mindfulness, directing the attention, focusing the attention on the sensations of the breath, mindfulness of breathing. Spending the first 10 minutes or so just trying to ignore the mind and pay attention to the breath, to be in the body. We're not trying to stop the mind from thinking. It does that all by itself. And try not to get involved in the thoughts. Let them be in the background. Involve your attention in investigating the sensations the breath creates in the body, the rising and falling of the chest, expanding and contracting of the abdomen, the air entering and exiting through the nostrils. If giving your attention to the breath feels like you're controlling the breath, that's okay. But try to put more attention, awareness on how the body naturally wants to breathe, whether it's deep or shallow, long or short. No need to intentionally control the breath. Just let the body breathe all by itself. Be the awareness that receives the breath, that witnesses, that experiences, that knows whether you're breathing in or out. Gathering the attention serves us as we explore and expand the instructions later. But for now, just returning to the breath each time the attention gets drawn back into thinking, acknowledge it with kindness, with patience, thinking again, paying attention to my mind again, planning, worrying, remembering, whatever the mind's up to. But then choosing to disengage, Set the thought aside. Return the attention back to the breath over and over. you're brand new to this practice, it's useful to keep it simple and just keep coming back to the breath. Just keep ignoring your mind, breaking the addiction to thinking, to believing your thoughts. This intervention of body awareness, breaking our identification with the thinking mind, is incredibly beneficial. The Buddha's instructions continued beyond the mindfulness of the breath and body, where he encouraged us to investigate our whole experience, the sense doors, sounds and smells and tastes, thoughts and emotions and sensations, and to investigate the feeling tone, what we're perceiving as pleasant, and our relationship to pleasure. This is where we create most of our suffering, the craving, the clinging. Our relationship to that which is felt, experienced, perceived as unpleasant, painful, uncomfortable. So much of our unnecessary suffering is a lack of tolerance, an inability to be uncomfortable. An unwillingness to feel our own pain. And the third category of feeling tones or experience is those phenomena, experiences that we can feel or hear, smell or taste, that are neither pleasant nor unpleasant. The neutral feeling tones. Exploring and investigating the sensations of the breath that you've been focusing on. Is your breath pleasant or unpleasant or neutral? And when other sensations in your body call for your attention, perhaps becoming uncomfortable from sitting still, bring mindfulness directly to the discomfort, rather than fidgeting away from it, moving out of it. Explore, inquire. Where's the center of this sensation? Where are the edges of the sensation? How's it changing? In this level, we also open to the mind. We turn towards the mind rather than ignoring it, include it. What kind of thoughts, emotions are happening? Can you identify those thoughts as pleasant or unpleasant, neutral? As the instructions expand in this way, becoming more interested in the process, the impermanent nature, how sounds arise and pass, sensations come and go, just like the breath does. just like every thought does, passing through. Perpetual change. We began the meditation by softening, releasing, relaxing, noticing how we often tense around pain, discomfort. The belly gets tight, or the jaw, the shoulders. Experiment with softening. Soften the belly with each exhale. Soften into the sensation rather than resisting. Allowing. Rather than trying to create peace or stillness, allow spaciousness, allow room, acceptance of yourself just as you are right now, with these thoughts and feelings and sensations. Rather than a narrow focus, and open, inclusive, and accepting awareness of thoughts arising and passing, and sensations, emotions. A kind awareness that has room for everything. Doesn't need to control it or cling to it. Room for anger and fear, craving and aversion, all arising and passing through kind awareness. Everything that is unpleasant is calling for compassion. All of our pain, painful sensations, painful emotions, painful thoughts. Try to be merciful with yourself, with your experience, rather than resisting, denying, trying to get rid of your pain. And accepting, tolerant, compassionate intention towards that which is hard to bear, hard to tolerate, uncomfortable. The last couple of minutes, shifting from the open awareness with compassion to the practice of loving kindness, where we just say to ourselves, may I be at ease just as I am. May I learn to be at ease with this mind, this body, this heart, this world. not a magical, peaceful world, but may I learn to be at ease in the midst of the confusion and ignorance in this world. I develop the wisdom and the compassion to navigate the confusion, ignorance of the world. May I develop the wisdom and compassion to be at ease with my own mind, with this body, this nervous system, with all my wounds, my fears, the whole human experience. And extending this wish from ourselves to each other, just as I wish to be at ease, may you be at ease. May you heal what needs to be healed, forgive what needs to be forgiven. Extending this out in widening circles, including friends and family, benefactors, those who are easy to care about, extending our goodwill, well-wishing, care, love. And including those who hold different views, opposing views, who we deem as confused. Ultimately, the Buddha said, radiate kindness over the entire world. Omitting none. In this way, we include both the Democrats and Republicans, the Yankees and the Dodgers, those nearby and far away, those being born and those dying, those experiencing oppression and those so confused that they are oppressing. May all beings find the willingness to heal, to awaken, to experience wisdom and compassion through their own efforts. May all beings be at ease. As the bell rings and the formal meditation ends, encouragements to not stop being mindful, but continue the present time, non-judgmental, kind awareness with eyes open, with body moving, with re-engaging the sense of self and separateness that often comes in when we kind of realize we're in bodies and in community. And And to recollect, one of the ways that mindfulness is translated, the word sati, is recollection. And one of the perspectives is that we talk about mindfulness like present moment awareness, present time awareness, but that things are moving so quickly, it's hard to catch what's happening because there's thoughts and there's sounds and there's smells and there's tastes and there's sensations and there's emotions and there's so much phenomena unfolding so quickly in the present that you can't catch it all. It's, where is the attention? Where are we placing the attention on the breath, or is it going into the mind or into the emotions or to some other sensation in the body? And that after we stop the formal meditation, we open our eyes, it can be very useful to recollect what just happened. Remember your meditation, reflect on, contemplate. What just happened? How much of the time was I able to be with the breath? How successful was I at bringing some tenderness, some compassion, some tolerance to what was uncomfortable, to my pain? How much of the meditation was I involved in craving and worrying and planning? And just to recollect that without judgment. All of the mindfulness encouragement is non-judgmental. We're not trying to say good or bad or right or wrong, just aware. Oh, it was like this. I was pretty settled tonight, or I was very distracted. I was really in my awareness was mostly in about the future. I was worrying, I was planning, I was craving, I was thinking about what the score is. What am I missing? The political topic brought up stuff, and kind of noticing how that was fueling the thoughts. So as you reflect on your current state of being, state of mind, awareness, there's that really beautiful summation, simplicity of the practice that we're trying to do, that one of my teachers, Lungpur Sumedho, John Sumedho, says, just constantly come back to the knowing of right now, it's like this. No judgment of the way it is, just present time. Right now, it's like this. These sensations, these thoughts, these feelings, without any judgment of the way it is. It's like this. And that is mindfulness. Right now, it's like this. I'm a big fan of taking it a little bit further and saying, like, it's like this, and it's quite painful. Therefore, it's calling for compassion. How much compassion can I bring to the pain that is here? The painful thoughts or the painful emotions or even the painful sensations of sitting still for the last hour. My ass hurts. It's like this. How much tolerance, how much friendliness, how much mercy and compassion can I bring to pain, physical, emotional, mental unpleasantness? Or it's like this and it's quite pleasant and I'm in the craving and in the clinging and in the hope for it to continue to be pleasant rather than acceptance of it's pleasant, but it's impermanent. Arising and passing pleasant mind states, arising and passing comfort. Comfort is temporary. I was uncomfortable 5 minutes ago, then you rang the bell, now I'm fine. But I won't remain fine. I'll get uncomfortable again. Temporary comfort, pleasant. So I'll say a couple of things, and then mostly actually I want to do Q&A. So think about if there's questions you have about Buddhism, about meditation, about anything. The Dharma is pretty straightforward and simple. Four Noble Truths, the truth of the reality that life is difficult and that there's suffering in life at times. The reality that our cause of almost all of the unnecessary levels of suffering is clinging and craving. The simple truth is that there's an intervention that you can let go of clinging and craving. You can develop compassion. You can develop non-attachment, but that it's a radically counter-instinctual process. It's possible, but it's normal to suffer and to cling and to crave and to judge and to fear and to be self-centered. All of that is normal. But to become altruistic and compassionate and non-attached is the solution, but it's quite challenging. It's quite difficult to train the mind through meditation, through renunciation, to see clearly and respond wisely. The third noble truth, second noble truth, is the cause of suffering, clinging. Third noble truth is it's possible to be awake. And when you're awake, you don't suffer. And to be awake means seeing clearly, seeing reality as it is, not distorted through self-centered biases, not distorted through opinions and views, but seeing reality, nature as it is, and then responding appropriately. I've said a bit about the appropriate response. In some ways, there's three. Compassion for pain. Compassion is the only appropriate response to pain, the only wise relationship to pain. Compassion, mercy, empathy, caring, friendliness. But as we all know, not so easy to be compassionate towards our own pain, not so easy to be compassionate towards other people's pain, especially when they're annoying us or hurting us. Hard to be compassionate towards someone who's hurting you or is hurting the world. Hard, possible, but quite challenging. Compassion towards pleasure, the only wise relationship. This is the simple Buddhist teaching, is non-attachment. There's never a good reason to cling. There's never a time where you can cling and be attached and not suffer as the result of your clinging and attachment, which makes being happy hard because we're wired to cling and we have to rewire ourselves to let go. Non-clinging is not easy, but it is possible. It's the outcome of meditation. It's the outcome of the wisdom that arises through the training that Buddhism offers us. And the third is, and last week's talk was all about the third aspect of understanding the impersonal, not self nature. Buddha Dasa Bhikkhu's book that I read last week, the talk about the impersonal nature of things, the not self. So much of our suffering comes from this self-centered delusion of I and me and mine. And meditation leads to understanding that the mind has a mind of its own. It's not worth believing. We have to, some of the time, we have to develop enough discernment to see which of my thoughts are trustworthy and which of my thoughts are not trustworthy. The impersonal nature of things. So simple, let go, have compassion. Don't take it personal. If you can do those three things, how different would your life be if you were able to accept life as it is without clinging to needing it to be different? How different would your life be if you had compassion for all of the painful situations that were happening in your heart, in your mind, in your relationships, in the world? How different would your life be if you didn't if we weren't so identified with this ego self, I, me, mine, if we weren't so defensive and so identified about our stuff, about our identities, about our selves. So I open it. We have a half hour or so for conversation, questions, comments, clarifications, please.
So, I know how you doing, man.
Good to see you.
I don't know how I'm gonna phrase this. I know what I want to do. So I've always been into Buddhism, not always, but for a long time, and I'm coming to understand it more. And maybe you can give me a more distinct answer, because I don't know much about Hinduism, but I do know that a lot of other, and I know that a lot of Buddhism isn't even necessarily considered a religion, but a lot of other religions are seeking God consciousness and soul, and eventually, ideally, being like eternally happy and joy. And with Buddhism, it's my understanding that, did the Buddha say there isn't a soul and it's more realistic to look at it this way? And I guess I'm just wondering what the distinct differences between some of those outlooks and this study itself.
Did you hear at home much of that question? No. Yeah, some of it. The question is, what does Buddhism teach? I'm paraphrasing. What does Buddhism teach about eternal soul that most other religions teach about? And kind of a question about what's the goal? What's, if Hinduism teaches a goal of kind of enlightened, blissful experience, and Christianity and, maybe all of the monotheistic, eternalist religions teach a goal of a heavenly afterlife. What does Buddhism teach as the sort of ultimate goal, kind of? And what about the soul? Is there a soul in Buddhism? What did the Buddha teach? Is that close enough?
Yeah, I did think that was nonsense.
So you've heard this term, the middle path. Have you heard this term that Buddhism is the middle path? The Eightfold Path is the middle path. And one of the ways that he addresses these philosophical questions is, he says, I teach a middle path that is neither the extreme of eternalism, which is the philosophy that all of the monotheistic religions hold. You have an eternal soul that will exist forever. And, and that soul will go to an afterlife of, heaven or hell, depending on your actions in this life, or I guess maybe you can get stuck in the purgatory, but it's forever. That shit goes on, there's no end to it. It's eternalism. And even in Hinduism, which believed not in just an eternal afterlife, but a process of reincarnation and rebirth, there was still a sort of eternalist view of like, and that shit just keeps going. Lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, and you can improve it, and you can get to an enlightened state where it's a pretty pleasant process. And he said, because that's one extreme. He said, I have this middle view. He said, the other extreme is the nihilists, who say there's no spirit, there's no soul. That's kind of the materialist, sort of like most of you believe. This extreme view of like, I'm just this body and I'm worm food. And, and this is it. One life, one chance. YOLO. This is it. And there's no soul and there's no spirit and there's nothing other than a physical body that just your parents fucked, they created you, you're here for a little while, that's it. He said that's also an extreme materialist, nihilistic view of understanding of the spiritual process that humans are. He said, I teach a middle path, which is neither one life nor eternalism. And that middle path is acknowledging that we have a personal responsibility, karmic momentum, and the teachings of rebirth, of reincarnation. And he was kind of saying, like, there is what we might call a spirit or a soul that is the owner of your actions, your karma. and that you're here and there's a process that's going on that you're fueling by how you behave. And if you behave wisely and kindly and develop wisdom and compassion, and it takes away the fuel of keeping on coming back over and over. Like you come back into rebirth from a Buddhist perspective. If you don't get it right, you get another chance. You come back and you come back because we're here from the. He doesn't say this directly, but the way that I would think about it is we're here to heal. Every time we are, we have a lifetime, we have an opportunity to heal, to awaken, to forgive, to develop wisdom, develop compassion, to see clearly, learn to respond wisely to reality. Each lifetime that we don't do that, we say, okay, well, you have the karma of the last lifetime, and with whatever wisdom you developed in the last lifetime, you bring with you into your next. This is important. I know talking about reincarnation is a little off-putting for some people, but sometimes we think of, like, when you start thinking about reincarnation, you start thinking about like, oh, everything bad in my life is because of the shit I did in my past lifetimes. The palm reader told me so. Something like that. But also all of the good stuff in this lifetime, if this is perspective is true and this Buddhist teaching, is also, it comes from like you created the good stuff from your past actions. You bring the goodness with you, and hopefully, ideally, you make some progress, and that ultimately nirvana, awakening, enlightenment, is the deathless, is the end of rebirth, is the awakening to reality and the wise seeing, and but it's the end of rebirth. And so then the question is it the end of the soul? Is it an extinguishing of the soul? And the Buddha didn't say that. And he refused to identify exactly what that was. He said it's the end of rebirth. And so then the natural question is like, well, then what happens to our souls? What happens to our self? Where's that karmic momentum now? And he said things like, I'll give you the direct translation quote. He says, bear with me. Yeah, here it is. Some things that are in the scriptures that are assigned to the Buddha. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to tell you, this is what the Buddha said, and even this book is called The Word of the Buddha. It's okay to have a little bit of skepticism about direct quotes, because this was an oral tradition. It was only chanted and remembered and passed down from person to person for a couple hundred years before it was written down. So, the game of telephone of like, well, he said, celebrate, and then all of a sudden it's celibate. Or whatever, so some it's not, I don't find the scriptures to be like 100% reliable, but hopefully close, most of it close. Yeah. The script, yeah. No, but interesting to look at it and be like, well, where's the wisdom in the Bible or in the, teachings, or where, look for the wisdom teachings there, not like it's all true, but maybe there's some good advice in there. So around Nibbana, the end of the deathless, he says, this truly is peace. This is the highest, namely the end of all karmic formations, the forsaking of every substratum of rebirth, the fading away of craving, detachment, extinction, Nibbana. There's a quote here. It says, enraptured with lusts, enraged with anger, blinded by delusion, overwhelmed, the mind ensnared, people aim at their own ruin, or at the ruin of others, at the ruin of both, and they experience mental pain and grief. But if lust, anger, and delusion are given up, one aims neither at their own ruin nor at the ruin of others, nor at the ruin of both themselves and others, and experiences no mental pain and grief. This is nibbana, immediate, visible in this life, inviting, attractive, and comprehensive to the wise. So both views are given there. What happens after you die? The fading away of lust, of all things. And then also here and now in this life, if you're just a good, kind, loving, compassionate person, and you're not trying to hurt yourself, you're not trying to hurt anybody else, the fading away of suffering here and now, visible in this lifetime, not just after death. So when pushed further of like, well, what happens to the soul? Where do we go? He says, truly, there is a realm where there is neither the solid nor the fluid, neither heat nor motion, neither this world nor any other world, neither sun nor moon. This I call neither arising nor passing away, neither standing still nor being born nor dying. There is neither a foothold nor development nor any basis. This is the end of suffering. There is an unborn, an unoriginated, uncreated, unformed. If there were not this unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, and unformed escape from the world of the born, originated, the created, and the formed, then escape would not be possible. But there is an uncreated, unborn, unoriginated. But since there is an unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, unformed, therefore, escape is possible from the world. There's one other piece here. He says, but then he doesn't really, he says there's a realm, but then he negates it. Anything that we want to cling to as, oh, it's heaven, and I get to go there and I get to be there. There's somewhere else here where it says something like, it's neither form nor a lack of form. There's no self nor a lack of self. There's no consciousness nor a lack of consciousness, where he does this thing of negating all of the ways that our minds want to cling to a self that goes somewhere after enlightenment. But also saying, and it's not just, he uses the term extinguishing, but that it's not this nihilistic, I no longer exist. It's neither existence nor non-existence. The fuck does that mean? But I think that he's really trying hard to not give us something to cling to philosophically, but this sort of promise of like, it's not suffering. Isn't that good enough? Isn't just not suffering good enough? Do you have to bring that ego identification into the afterlife, into what's next? If you practice this diligently, not only will you not suffer in this life, you won't be reborn into a realm of suffering. You'll end the cycle of rebirth.
That helps a lot. I was worried that it was like, no, the reality is that, once the suffering is over, it's kind of over. Your time is over and there's nothing. And he didn't, so that helped. Good.
He didn't give us much to
Cling to.
cling to about it. But he did say, there is a sort of promise of like, it's quite desirable and it's unoriginated and it's unborn and it's a realm.
More nihilistic.
You ever see the wheel of existence? The 6 realms of existence, and there's the heaven realms, and there's the hell realms, and there's the human realms, hungry ghost realms, animal realms, jealous god realms. 6 realms. And then if you look in the art, like in the Tibetan thangkas and these beautiful depictions of the Buddhist cosmology, all of those realms are samsara, and you can be reborn into any of those realms. And then there's a Buddha sitting outside of it, overlooking it. So like, but there's a heaven realm in there. So he's not like in heaven. He's off of the wheel. This awakened consciousness that is off of the wheel, not in heaven, not in humanity, not in hell realm, but that is free from that cycle of rebirth in any of those realms. And it's joyous and it's blissful and it's free, but there's no self to identify with in that. I'll take the hand at home. Philip, go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a question around greed, hatred, and delusion. So I was listening to a talk by a teacher, and he was talking about one of Adon Chaw's monks coming up to him and saying, "I'm good at recognizing greed and hatred, but it's hard to recognize delusion." And Adon Chaw said, "It's like you're riding on a horse and wondering where the horse is." And it got me reflecting on like looking at my own experiences. I've never really experienced greed and hatred that wasn't some form of delusion. So my question is greed and hatred always rooted in delusion? And if so, then why are greed and hatred listed separately?
Could everybody hear it here? The question? Is greed and hatred always a form of delusion? And if so, why is there a third category? I think the answer, I'm not certain. I don't really know why, but here's what I think. I think that because I think that for it's like the answer is yes. Greed for pleasure is always fueled by the delusion that if I get this, it will make me happy forever. That kind of delusional greed that thinks satisfying it, right? So craving is a liar. Greed is a liar. It lies to you and says, if you get this, if you satisfy this lust, this greed, this whatever it is, it will work. And then you do it and you're like, fucking liar. It didn't work. It never works because greed, craving is too repetitive. And so anytime your mind is saying, this will work, you know from your life experience so far, it's temporary. It's not permanent. There's no permanent satisfaction in any of the satisfaction of greed-based, lust-based thoughts. So it's always a delusion, likewise with hatred. Now, there is a category of delusion that I believe the Buddha is referring to that's not greed and that's not hatred and that is self-centeredness. And I think that's why it's the third category, because yes, greed is always delusion. Hatred is always delusion. Hatred has that similar delusion of like, if I can get rid of this pain, then I'll be happy, rather than, kind of learning to have compassion for pain. The I, me, mine is a delusion that is neither greed nor hatred. It's just self-centeredness. I guess it's clinging, and so you could say clinging to the self, the I, me, mine, the ego identification as a form of greed, a form of clinging, but it's not really greed. It's not lust in that way. It's just identification. It's taking something personal, which is not personal, taking something as solid, which is not solid. It's the delusion. I didn't use this last week, but in talking about the self-centeredness that we have and the identification with I, me, mine, and the solid, separate self that we think we are, it's a little bit like believing that rainbows are real and permanent and something that are tangible. We all know that rainbows are an optical experience. That they're created by the factors of moisture and light and something to reflect off of, right? Something solid. We all know that. And when we see, and as adults, and you see a rainbow and you're like, oh, it's a beautiful thing to see. And I understand that it's created by the conditions. It's a temporary thing that's created by the conditions of moisture, light, earth, whatever. The self, the I, the me, the mine is the same thing. It's created based on the conditions of consciousness, memory, physical form. It creates this rainbow of self. The delusion of I am this body. I am these thoughts. I am these emotions. And believing that is like believing that, there's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. If I could just get to the end of the rainbow and find that fucking leprechaun. Maybe it's a cheesy analogy, but it's part of the way that I think about understanding that delusion of self-centeredness that the mind creates all by itself, creates a rainbow, and we think it's real. And we're not seeing clearly. It's just created based on the conditions of having a body and a mind and memory and perception. Creates the I, me, mine. So just like we don't say there's no such thing as a rainbow, there is a such thing. It's just how delusional are we about it, about its solidity. There's a such thing as a, it's a thing. We can see it. The self is a thing. It's created. It's just not solid. It's just not separate. It's just not continuous. It arises based on the presence of moisture and light and a body and a mind and a memory. Is that helpful enough, Philip?
Yeah, thank you.
Couple of hands in the room. Tibby, please.
Can I change the subject?
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
No, I just help me with the dichotomy, right? I went to see your good friend Stephen Batchelor, like maybe 30 years ago, young activist out of college. And he was like, oh, and he was talking about maybe the political activism is just being yourself. It's being Buddhist, right? It's not trying to tell someone or change someone. At the same time, we're taught as Buddhists to be compassionate, right? So then if we think we can spread compassion, right, then of course it seems to me to act. And then the last part of that is the Buddha himself had things that people didn't ask him. He was bringing something new,
Mhm,
right? So that's activism,
mhm.
right? Or that is an activism. Like I learned, like I'm starting to understand. Oh, just don't put it on the world, negative or positive, right? Just be. So how do we deal with all of those questions in a time like that? What's the right action?
Vote. Go vote. I don't know. My sense is,
Like from the Buddha, I of course have the answer I want.
yeah,
But I want to know what was the teaching?
about how politically engaged to be.
Yeah, or he didn't answer that directly, but when you look at the teachings, what was his thought?
I mean, I see the Buddha as a, revolutionary political activist who was against all forms of ignorance. Primarily, he was trying to teach us these three things: be compassionate, be non-attached, and not identified with the self. Primarily, he was trying human beings to wake up. Here's how you can wake up. But he also had lots of times where he was out saying, of course, racism is ignorance. Racism is delusion. Sexism is delusion. Violence is delusion, is ignorance. He was politically and socially engaged. My sense is primarily on individual empowerment of here's how we can wake up. And he didn't seem to have a lot of hope for the world waking up. There's that sort of like very optimistic Buddhist teaching that says all beings have the power, the ability, the potential. The third noble truth says everyone can get free from suffering if they're willing to do the work. Ability is a given. It's very optimistic. And then in other places, the Buddha is saying, but it's very rare. It's very radical what we're undertaking. And it doesn't seem like the masses will ever really take to it. And that it's just going to be a handful of beings in every generation that have the willingness to really develop this level of discipline, this level of wisdom, this level of... But his actions were, that sometimes he went out and protested war, got on the front lines of violent conflicts. Sometimes he did a lot of debate with, kind of religious people of his time, letting them know that his understanding was very different than what they were teaching. and that they were, mistaken, that they were confused, that they were delusional. Also about some of the theistic stuff that you were asking about. So he was pretty outspoken about what he understood to be true and what he understood to be ignorance. He wasn't shy of conflict and of activism. But also, and I'll end with this tonight, he also supposedly ended almost every conflict and every lecture and every teaching with saying, it's time for you to do as you see fit, turning the empowerment back to the listener. And the way that I hear that, he's like, here's the nature of reality. Here's what must be done if you want to free yourself from suffering. But don't take my word for it. You have to find out for yourself what is true. You have to experience this directly. It's time for you to do as you see fit. Don't believe me. Don't believe in me. Train your mind and find the truth for yourself. All of that having said, and maybe this isn't the Buddha's teachings, it's my own, is that I find like that it's important to be engaged socially, and it's very challenging for me politically in the bipartisan, where it feels like you're choosing the lesser of evils on either side, and there is no good choice. And that most of the politicians are corrupt and ignorant and supporting a whole bunch of shit that I don't want to have anything to do with on both sides. But still, for me, I out of letting compassion, being like, what's going to reduce harm? What's going to be less harmful? What's going to be less devastating to, but again, it's kind of like on which side? It's going to be devastating to some people. There's no perfect choice. So vote. If you feel like it, up to you. I'm going to end with that tonight. And I'll see you next week. Couple of announcements. Class is done by donation. Against the Stream is a nonprofit organization that is supported solely by the generosity of you who attend, that are part of this community. I'm curious, how many people are monthly supporters? Maybe at home. I was just trying to get a sense. Maybe you could raise your hands. I know a lot of people do. I'd like to try to maybe year end do some fundraising, and I'm wondering if tonight I could get some commitments for people to become monthly supporter. Monthly supporter means that you give us your credit card number and you say, this is how much I want to give every month, whether I attend or not. And part of the beautiful thing of that is generosity, and also getting out of the fee for service capitalist mentality of I only give when I attend. Rather than I give to support the Dharma, I give to support the meditation center, I give to support Noah as a teacher, I give to support not just because I receive, getting out of that kind of commerce of it and just getting into the generosity of, I want to support this thing. I want people to be able to come and meditate. So I was hoping to get more monthly supporters. It's one of the best ways for us actually to pay the rent and support the center. So please consider signing up to become a monthly supporter. At home, there's a link there in the chat that Michelle posted. If you're here, you actually have to, we don't have a way for you to do it here. You have to go onto the website and sign up to become a monthly supporter. And you can choose, I want to give $25 or $50 or $100 a month. And please consider doing that, even if you're just visiting, if you can afford it and you feel moved to do so. I don't think I have any other Against the Stream things scheduled to promote for now. There is a Refuge Recovery weekend retreat in North Carolina in December. I believe it's the 13th through 15th, second week in December, silent meditation retreat that I'll be teaching in Boone, North Carolina. So if you have any friends or family, or if you're at home in that area, there's still spaces in that meditation retreat that weekend. And I'll get some things scheduled. I'll do a day-long for Against the Stream or Refuge. I'll do a day-long meditation retreat here in January, and I'll get that scheduled and up for registration soon. And a good way to support us is buying the books and the t-shirts and the sweatshirts and stuff like that, supporting the merch. At home, you can do it through the website, againstthestream.com. Here, you can do it in person. Sebastian will take your money. May any goodness that comes from our practice of meditation and our discussion of the Buddha Dharma be shared with all living beings in existence. May each one of us get as free as we can in this lifetime, and together may we create a positive change on this planet. Good seeing everybody, and see you next time.